Bodybuilding has made a U-turn during the last half-century. Back in the day, people valued the aesthetics and proportions, whereas today it is mainly about the size, and not just in the open category. What has changed since then is without a doubt the doses of the doping used. Although it may seem obvious, we don't have that many opportunities to actually be able to compare the amounts of supplementation taken then and now. Bodybuilders very rarely describe what they take and how much. Being this open is exceptional enough to nearly always echo loudly and cause quite a stir. The problem is, the declarations of competitors are usually, to put it mildly, not very reliable. Bodybuilders tend to lower the amount of aids they take. Recently, Arnold Schwarzenegger himself shared his experiences. So far, he has openly admitted to taking anabolics, but he has always kept the specifics in secret. One could expect that someone who has dominated in this sport for so many years would also be the person taking the most. However, according to him, it was the complete opposite. Arnold allegedly started his journey with supplementation back in 1967, which was right before first winning Mr. Universe. He discussed all of it in his autobiography. Inspired by the athletic successes of the Soviets, he decided to test the products they used on himself. The circumstances in which he did that seem surreal from today's point of view. As it turns out, he simply asked his doctor for a prescription, which he got without any problems. It was an anabolic in form of injection, which he was meant to take every 2 weeks, as well as pills, which he was recommended to take between the injections. We're probably talking about one of the testosterone esters characterized by a longer half-life, or Primobolan, which was popular at the time. When it comes to steroids administered in oral form, based on the text above, we know that they were certainly taken more than once. In one of the interviews, he mentions that back in his days, people would usually take 3 pills of Dianabol a day, which suggests that in his autobiography, he was actually talking about this medication.
We talked about it very openly. I mean, anyone that was asked, he says, you take steroids? Yeah, I take 3 Dianabol a day. Or someone else would say, I would take this, and that. It was not an illegal thing.
So let's take a look at how this relates to the information he provided in a recent interview for the Men's Health magazine. He outright said that it was 100 of testosterone a week, as well as 3 pills of Dianabol a day, a total of 15 milligrams. Except for the frequency of injections, his declarations are in line with what he said more than a decade ago. The thing is, these are incredibly low doses. It's not uncommon for people on a testosterone replacement therapy to have fuller syringes than that. Such amounts would provide Arnold with a male hormone level within the normal. This was more likely the base for taking Dianabol, which also inhibits the natural production of androgens. But this substance was also taken by him pretty much in the minimal effective doses. For the context, some bodybuilders can even reach 100 milligrams a day. During the golden era, small amounts of testosterone or Primobolan were a popular cycle. Steve Davis, who used to work out with Arnold, mentions widespread use of this exact protocol.
You know, in my era, it was 3 Dianabol a day and a shot a week.
There is also a preserved poem by Frank Zane in which he can read a similar content, which makes the declarations by the 7-time winner of Mr. Olympia consistent. It's hard to believe, though, that he could achieve such a level by taking the absolute minimum. If some bodybuilder came up with such claims today, he would have probably ended up laughed at. It is worth noting that the cycle written out by his doctor started 12 weeks before the competition, and it is actually soon before getting on the stage when bodybuilders take the highest doses. Not so long ago, Chris Bumstead said that during the off-season, he only takes 500 milligrams of testosterone a week. Although he has always been honest with his viewers, there is still a considerable group of people who didn't believe him on that. This makes Arnold's statements even harder to believe. One cannot deny his brilliant genetics, which also influence the body's response to anabolic agents. If 2 different people were to take an identical ration of testosterone, they would get different results. People who experience exceptionally huge gains from relatively low amounts of steroids are called hyper-respondents. Without a doubt, Schwarzenegger was also in this group. Even so, we're still talking about disproportionately low doses for the kind of physique achieved by him. Maybe this was a gentleman's agreement with other bodybuilders on using similar dosage in their statements. Arnold remains consistent in his claims, unlike Tom Platz, who gives different information whenever asked about what he used to take. During a 1985 seminar, he claimed that the highest doses he had ever taken were 700 milligrams a week, but he didn't specify what exact substances they were.
The most I've ever taken, the most I would ever consider taking would be 100 milligrams a day.
Recently, when asked about the same thing, he said that he was limited to only 100 milligrams of nandrolone a week, as well as 20 milligrams of winstrol a day. His cycle was supposed to be the same over 10 years, and he allegedly only spent $300 on the whole preparation for the competitions. Even with inflation taken into account, this is a ridiculously low price for the entire preparation period. On top of that, such doses would yield rather moderate results. And let me remind you that the circumference of Tom's thigh was more than 76 centimeters. Without a doubt, it was to a large degree thanks to his heavy workouts. Nevertheless, as he aged, he started downplaying the role of anabolics more and more. He certainly didn't want his strenuous workouts at the gym to be diminished. Both Schwarzenegger and Platz point out that back in their days, bodybuilding wasn't all about doping, which caused it to be perceived as a safe sport. The bodybuilders of today resort to the extremes, which results in many of them struggling with serious health consequences. It's quite possible that the king of thigh muscles simply doesn't remember what his cycles were like anymore. After all, the last time he was at the stage was 36 years ago. This would be quite a major error though, as in his first statement he mentioned an amount of steroids that was several times higher. There's also a possible scenario where both competitors are telling the truth, but they are only bringing up their more conservative protocols. Arnold may have started experimenting more and more with age. Casey Viator, who was an active bodybuilder during the golden era, mentions that sometime around 1974, bodybuilders started allowing themselves to get further and further, and that was around the time when Schwarzenegger's shape was at its peak. Then there is also Mike Mentzer, who, according to himself, used to take weekly doses of Dianabol counted in grams. Fitting in this context is a statement by Sergio Oliva, who was a winner of Mr. Olympia shortly before Arnold. According to him, the amounts of meds at the time weren't high. He also brought up taking nandrolone as well as Dianabol, which were the most popular substances back then. Hence, we know that during the era of Schwarzenegger's successes, pretty much only a few medications were used. Statements from former bodybuilders are consistent on that. Back then, they didn't use the pharmaceuticals that are popular today, such as the growth hormone, for example. However, the reports regarding the dosage of anabolics, which is actually the key issue here, are contradictory. We know for sure that the amounts were much smaller than today. Arnold's relations, on the other hand, are not convincing. In his case, it was supposed to be practically a testosterone replacement therapy with a minimal addition of Dianabol. There is no way to develop the kind of physique that has won Mr. Olympia 7 times this way. Let us not forget that Schwarzenegger had competitors. Even if they all use similar protocols, sooner or later someone would have to step out of line in hopes of increasing the size. This would have caused the snowball effect, which would have inevitably caused everyone to start taking more and more. I believe that this was exactly how it looked. Arnold isn't necessarily lying to us, but he probably isn't telling the whole truth either. He likely used the cycle he mentioned at the beginning of his career or during the off-season, and over time he allowed himself higher amounts.